Hello. I'm reading this book at the moment, Ireland and the Pope by James Maguire. The subtitle of it is A Brief History of Papal Intrigues Against Irish Liberty from Adrian IV to Leo XIII. I just want to read a couple of paragraphs, and it's from a chapter called The Fenian Movement Opposed by the Church. Quote, passing over the Tenant League agitation, the next serious effort for the liberation of Ireland was the Fenian movement, organised by a few daring spirits in May 1858. The purpose was to organise and drill an Irish army, to have them supplied with munitions of war by similar organisations of Irishmen in America, to rise at a given signal, storm the English strongholds and proclaim Ireland free. It was too loosely organised for a movement so serious, and was in many respects impracticable and reckless, but it was full of genuine patriotism and love of a country whose condition was so wretched and desperate that it could not be seriously injured by their adventure. So what's that saying? Reading Irish history or your own people's history is really informative, because what it does is it tells you about yourself. Funnily enough, right? Because the mindset, the worldviews, the conflicting morality, the questioning of action or withdrawn, all that sort of stuff, all perfectly human reactions to whatever's going on in your environment. Those that were felt by the men in the past, they get passed on. Okay, even if not directly, then through the people who were around to experience that history, they had their experience and interpretation of what was going on. And they had their own doubts and insecurities and uncertainties about whether to do this or that. And we're here as a product of those people surviving, and through their very survival, they pass on that sort of information. The psychological responses to what was going on historically, or I suppose not historically in their moment, because it was their moment, but from our perspective it was historical. The psychological reactions to that is passed on, and there's loads and loads of studies and all that lovely stuff. If you want to get into that and read that, there's a good book called It Didn't Start With You, How Inherited Family Trauma Shapes Who We Are and How to End the Cycle, blah blah blah. But they're studying the stuff now, right? If you needed it to be studied, to be verified, some people just kind of grasp it and go, of course, like, you know, that's his nature, as they say in Ireland, you know. Lovely. We have a handle on that already. So these lads, I'll read it again because it's indicative of today, and I suppose it poses a question to us today from those who have gone before. It was full of genuine patriotism and love of a country whose condition was so wretched and desperate that it could not be seriously injured by their adventure. So what's suggested there is that the state that the country was in, it operated in two ways. Number one, it motivated people to get up and try and change what was happening. But number two, it also acted as a release from social pressures, from the moral social standards that people have. And in Ireland, we are brutal with it. And I mean that in a severe and harsh way. And I'm not even denigrating it too much. If it sounds like I am, I'm not. I'm just saying, like, the measure of the social and moral standards that Irish people expect of Irish people. Other Irish people, it's interesting to see that as well, because we hold other peoples to a lower standards. We allow certain traits and characteristics of different peoples that we would not permit in other Irish people. It's really interesting to see that, and I think it explains a part of why Irish people will turn on each other quicker than they'll stand up against another enemy. It's really interesting. So, and that's what I mean by, like, what has happened before can teach us about who we are, right? So we're a product of that. Nobody else, no other people is a product of that. They cannot buy that. They cannot siphon that off of us. It is not theirs. It does not belong to them. Our history is our history, and we're unique in the fact that we're products of our history, still on the land where that history happened. It's a beautiful thing, and we need to hold that and feel that. We need to feel that. Like, sit and think about that. Imagine what people who went before 100 years ago, 200 years ago, what they were going through when they were hungry, their houses are wrecked, the place is a state, and they're thinking, am I ready to go and give my life to try and change this, right? We're not in two dissimilar situations to that now. And I think it's telling. Love of a country whose condition was so wretched and desperate that I could not be seriously injured by their adventure. So, what I meant by this, the state of the country at the time acting as a freeing element from the social and moral obligations to society that Irish people still retain. What I mean by that is that people were looking around going, we are in such dire straits here that regardless of what sort of trouble I'm going to cause by acting, I cannot possibly make the situation for myself or for my people any worse. Therefore, because I won't be doing any additional harm to my people, I am free to act in a violent way if needs be, right? And I think we're caught there. We are caught there. And I think we've been studied. We might not take our history seriously. Most of us don't. Like, I'm only kind of coming around to this stuff in the last year or whatever, and taking it a little bit more seriously, because to be honest, I shied away from Irish history so much because I found it really, I wasn't able for it at the time. It was disturbing to me. It done something to me that kind of moved me away from it pretty quickly. But now, a little bit different because necessity, I suppose, right? So, now, a lot of what is stopping people from taking any sort of stand, never mind acting and doing XYZ, from taking any sort of stand, even to the point of voicing their own deep feelings and sentiments about things, is the reaction of other people. And I think Irish people go around, we're guided and controlled, and we maintain ourselves and each other by a spectre. You know, a spectre, like a ghost, a spirit that watches over us, and that we assume it to be a legitimate way or a legitimate perspective on how others actually are. Because we hold such high moral standards for others, we assume that everybody else besides us must adhere to those moral standards, and we just don't. So we need to shirk ourselves from that for now, because it's not real. It's not real. Like, you see people and they will give out about young fellas breaking the law or protesting and maybe saying a few names or curses or whatever, and saying, oh, well, they broke the law and therefore they should be arrested. These same people are texting on their phone when they're driving, right? So we're very selective in how we hold ourselves to lawful and legal standards, right? Whereas we allow ourselves, my point on that is, we allow ourselves off more easily than we do other people. We hold other Irish people to higher standards than we're willing to uphold ourselves. Okay? And the point of this little passage here is that it was only when these men, just from this fella's interpretation, it might not have been the motivation for everyone, but you can kind of have a look at them and examine them and come up with your own opinion on it, right? But this is what I'm taking from it. That it was only when some Irish people recognised that they could not possibly damage their own people more or destroy their own reputation more by causing that damage, that they were willing to act. Okay? And I find that really interesting. And again, dead generations, past generations are now asking us these questions again. What's your answer?